November 18, 1944. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley stood in his command post in Normandy, poring over reports from the American sector. 6 weeks had passed since D-Day, 6 weeks of relentless battle across Normandy's shattered countryside. American soldiers had fallen in narrow fields between ancient stone walls, twisted banks overgrown with trees, making visibility beyond 10 meters nearly impossible. The First Army had already suffered over 40,000 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing. Each number on those reports represented a human life, a story abruptly ended. But Bradley faced more than just numbers. To the east, 6 kilometers away, the city of Caen remained stubbornly under German control. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery had promised Eisenhower that his forces would capture Caen on D-Day itself, breaking through German lines and opening a path for Allied forces. Yet 6 weeks later, the city still held strong under German defenses. This delay allowed the enemy to concentrate their armored divisions against the Americans. Every German tank that wasn't tied down fighting the British now threatened Bradley's soldiers. The price of Montgomery's caution was paid in blood. Bradley's gaze lingered on the reports. Sons of Iowa, factory workers from Detroit, dying because of decisions made miles away. And so the stage was set for both catastrophe and brilliance, as American commanders struggled to navigate the consequences of Allied indecision. Normandy had been a meticulously planned operation, the largest amphibious assault in history. The northern beaches, Gold, Juno, and Sword, were British and Canadian objectives, with Caen as the linchpin. Securing it quickly would have opened the interior, allowing Allied forces to advance, outflank German positions, and prevent their armored reserves from concentrating against American troops to the west. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, British forces stormed the northern beaches as planned. Yet despite initial successes, progress toward Caen was agonizingly slow. Montgomery insisted on consolidation, carefully positioning artillery, organizing supply lines, and preparing for what he claimed would be an inevitable push north.
His caution, though methodical, came at a cost. German forces, guided by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, had concentrated their best divisions near Caen. With every British hesitation, German panzer divisions were freed to strike at the Americans trapped among the bocage, where thick hedgerows and narrow lanes turned each field into a fortress. Tanks became easy targets for concealed German anti-tank weapons. Infantrymen faced hidden machine guns, and every advance demanded steep sacrifices. Bradley and his staff watched in frustration as Americans paid the price for Montgomery's deliberate pacing. The bocage, ancient and unyielding, was now a killing field, each twist of the hedgerow exacting a deadly toll on men and machines alike. By mid-July, Bradley understood the grim arithmetic of Normandy. His soldiers' valor could not compensate for strategic stagnation. Over 40,000 men had fallen or been wounded, nearly a quarter of his forces debilitated in the brutal struggle across Normandy's twisted fields. The Germans had exploited Montgomery's delays, throwing their best armored units where they would do the most damage. Meanwhile, American ingenuity began to tip the scales. Engineers adapted tanks to breach the impenetrable hedgerows. Infantrymen learned to navigate the deadly corridors of trees and banks. The First Army prepared for a decisive move, an operation that could finally exploit the weakness Montgomery's caution had inadvertently created, the gap between German defenses and the static British front. Bradley's calculations were clear. Speed and aggression were now vital. Waiting any longer would only allow the Germans to reorganize, to prepare fresh ambushes, and to bleed American forces further. The time for methodical preparation had passed. The Americans needed bold action. And at the center of this plan was General George S. Patton, a man whose understanding of mobile warfare was unmatched. Patton had already proven his skill in North Africa and Sicily. Now in Normandy, he was ready to unleash a force capable of cutting through German lines, exploiting every weakness, and turning weeks of attrition into a decisive breakthrough. As July stretched
into the sweltering days of midsummer, the First Army prepared for Operation Cobra. The frustration of waiting, of watching British hesitation at Caen, had reached its peak. Bradley's command post buzzed with the urgency of planning. Heavy bombers were loaded with thousands of tons of explosives, ready to rain destruction on German defensive lines. Every map, every reconnaissance report, confirmed what Bradley already knew. Speed was the enemy's worst nightmare. The Germans, though disciplined and entrenched, were vulnerable when their cohesion was shattered. Every fortified hedge, every concealed machine gun nest could be destroyed if the Americans struck with relentless momentum. Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army was poised, its mechanized columns waiting for the signal. Patton, always impatient with caution, had studied the terrain with meticulous detail. He understood the dangers of the bocage, yet he also saw opportunity where others saw only obstacles. Engineers had modified tanks with hedgerow cutters, infantry had practiced the deadly maneuvers needed to breach German defenses, and every unit knew that timing would be everything. For Patton, the success of Cobra was not just about taking ground. It was about redeeming weeks of American losses, seizing the initiative, and proving that boldness, not hesitation, would decide the fate of Normandy. As the first bombs were loaded and crews prepared for takeoff, the tension in Bradley's headquarters was electric. History hung in the balance, measured in yards of earth and lives of men. July 25, 1944, dawned over Normandy with an ominous quiet. Thousands of bombers soared into the sky, carrying nearly 4,000 tons of explosives aimed at the German front lines near St. Lo. The devastation was catastrophic. German fortifications, supply lines, and troop concentrations were obliterated in a thunderous storm of fire and smoke. Soldiers on the ground watched as the landscape transformed into chaos. The bocage, once a natural fortress, reduced to shattered earth, splintered trees, and jagged craters. Then, at the precise moment, Patton's Third Army surged forward. Tanks, infantry, and artillery moved in perfect coordinate.
Caen, exploiting every gap in the German defenses. Resistance was fierce, but the Germans, stunned by the bombing and overwhelmed by speed, struggled to regroup. Bradley observed every move from his command post, feeling the weight of every decision made in the previous 6 weeks. The American forces were finally taking the initiative, carving a path through the nightmare terrain that had claimed tens of thousands of lives. This operation was not merely tactical, it was personal. For the soldiers who had endured the hedgerows, who had faced hidden machine guns and panzerfausts, each advance was a vindication of courage and sacrifice. For Bradley and Patton, it was proof that American strategy, when executed decisively, could outmatch even the most prepared German defenses. Yet even amidst the success, the shadow of British delays at Caen lingered. The cost of waiting had been paid in blood, and now every victory carried a reminder of what might have been avoided.
As the dust settled over St. Lo, Bradley knew the true measure of victory would depend on speed. Patton's forces were moving relentlessly, exploiting gaps in the German lines with a ferocity that seemed almost reckless, yet perfectly calculated. Every mile gained forced the Germans into hasty retreats or desperate counterattacks. Panzer divisions, once concentrated against the Americans, found themselves outmaneuvered, trapped between Bradley's advancing infantry and Patton's armored columns. The bocage, which had seemed an insurmountable obstacle, now became a corridor of opportunity. Patton's understanding of mechanized warfare allowed him to anticipate German responses, striking before the enemy could organize. The Third Army's momentum was unstoppable, a wave that swept through previously fortified positions, leaving devastation in its wake. Meanwhile, Bradley coordinated supporting artillery, airstrikes, and logistics to ensure that Patton's advance would not stall. Every detail mattered, from ammunition supply to medical evacuation. The battlefield was a complex web of timing, terrain, and human courage. And through it all, the cost of delay at Caen remained a haunting memory. Thousands of American soldiers had paid with their lives for Montgomery's caution, but now, under Bradley and Patton, the tide was finally turning. The bocage, the fields, and the shattered towns of Normandy bore witness to a transformation, a desperate struggle giving way to strategic mastery, where bold action and decisive leadership would finally claim the ground the Allies had fought so long to reach. The German command struggled to respond. Rommel, aware of the speed and ferocity of the American advance, attempted to reposition panzer divisions, but coordination was nearly impossible under the relentless bombardment and fast-moving American units. Every delay cost German lives and resources. Bradley's intelligence reports confirmed what he already sensed: the initiative had shifted irrevocably. Patton's understanding of mobile warfare created a dynamic where the Germans could react, but never truly seize control. Infantrymen who had endured weeks of hedgerow fighting now found themselves striking with confidence, supported by tanks cutting paths through previously impenetrable defenses. Casualties still mounted, but the Americans were no longer trapped. They were driving the fight. For every village taken, for every mile of open country seized, the shadow of the British failure at Caen reminded Bradley that coordination among allies could be as crucial as fighting the enemy. Yet the American commanders pressed on,
leveraging speed, precision, and audacity to turn the battlefield in their favor. Patton's Third Army became a symbol of aggressive, decisive action, a force capable of executing complex maneuvers that others had only planned on paper. Bradley, watching the advance, knew that Operation Cobra was more than a military engagement. It was the turning point that would define the liberation of Normandy, the redemption of American losses, and the demonstration that boldness in command could overcome even the most entrenched opposition. By late July, the German defenses were crumbling under pressure. Saint-Lô, the centerpiece of the American breakthrough, became a testament to the synergy between Bradley's strategic planning and Patton's aggressive execution. The terrain, once a deadly trap of hedgerows and concealed weaponry, was being mastered by Americans who had adapted with ingenuity and relentless determination. Engineers had cleared paths, infantry had learned to navigate deadly obstacles, and armored units were exploiting openings with precision. The costs had been enormous, but the gains were decisive. Bradley and Patton coordinated every step, ensuring that momentum never faltered. Meanwhile, Montgomery, still engaged at Caen, could only watch as American success reshaped the battlefield. His hesitation had allowed Germans to concentrate forces against Bradley's men, yet now, with Patton's Third Army in motion, the balance had shifted. The First Army was breaking free from the constraints of the bocage, pushing toward open terrain where maneuver and firepower could dominate. Every German position overrun was a victory paid for by courage, strategy, and the determination to act decisively. The Americans had finally turned the
nightmare of Normandy into an opportunity, demonstrating that leadership, speed, and ingenuity could overcome even the most entrenched defenses. The sacrifices of the past 6 weeks were not forgotten. They were the foundation upon which success was now being built. The pace of the advance was relentless. Bradley and Patton knew that any pause could allow the Germans to recover. Communication lines hummed with reports from frontline units, tracking every movement, every skirmish, every breakthrough. The combination of strategic bombardment, innovative engineering, and aggressive armored thrusts had shattered the German cohesion. Villages that had resisted weeks of fighting now fell in hours, often with minimal resistance. Soldiers, though exhausted, pressed forward, driven by leadership that demanded both courage and initiative. The First Army, once confined to hedgerow killing grounds, now moved across open fields, exploiting weaknesses and seizing opportunities before the enemy could respond. The lessons learned in months of attrition were applied with deadly efficiency. Every maneuver, every decision reflected the synergy between planning and execution. Bradley's foresight and Patton's audacity had combined to produce a force capable of breaking through where caution had failed. Normandy was no longer a maze of deadly traps. It had become a theater of controlled, decisive action. And yet, the human cost remained, a reminder that even the most brilliant operations exacted their price in blood, sweat, and courage. As the summer of 1944 drew on, the liberation of Normandy was within reach. Patton's Third Army continued to exploit gaps, moving faster than any German commander could counter. Bradley oversaw the operations with a calm intensity, ensuring that the logistical and tactical machinery of the First Army kept pace with the unprecedented momentum. German divisions, exhausted and demoralized, struggled to regroup against forces that seemed to anticipate every move. The lessons of the hedgerows, the blood-soaked fields, and the weeks of attrition had been hard learned. Now they were being applied to devastating effect. The bocage that had claimed
thousands of lives was being mastered through ingenuity, training, and relentless leadership. Montgomery's delays at Caen were still a bitter memory, a cautionary trail of what hesitation could cost in war. But under Bradley and Patton, American forces had turned adversity into opportunity, converting suffering into triumph. Operation Cobra was more than a military victory. It was a testament to decisive action, strategic insight, and the courage of soldiers and commanders alike. Normandy, long a graveyard of hope and ambition, was finally opening to the liberation that had been fought for in blood, fire, and relentless determination. If you found this story compelling and want to dive deeper into the untold tales of World War II, the heroism, the tragedies, and the pivotal moments that shaped history, please hit the like button. Your thoughts matter, so leave a comment below and tell us which part of this story struck you the most, or which moments you found the most intense and unforgettable. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with more gripping stories, behind-the-scenes strategies, and the personal journeys of the men and women who changed the course of the war. Every like, comment, and subscription helps us continue bringing these historical stories to life and ensures you won't miss the next chapter in history that deserves to be remembered.